Hello Gobs and welcome back to another episode of RPG Stories. Today's episode is going to be a two-parter of a very long story, so hopefully it's long enough that it fills up the entire video. But if you have a particularly long story that you want me to read, you can send it to my subreddit, you can email it to me, or you can even leave it in the comments below. I do see the comments on the other videos of people leaving horror stories, and I sit back and I collect a bunch of them from like certain areas. So for like YouTube, I'll sit back and wait until a bunch of YouTube horror stories show up, and then I'll read all the YouTube ones at once. So if you're leaving the comments for the stories, just know I do see them. Okay, I do try to react to every comment that's left on my channel, if it's particularly good or insightful or anything like that. But enough about that. You are here for RPG stories, or I guess today it's going to be a story. I'm the Goblin King. I do RPG content. Click my name to see more content. And before we get into the story, it may or may not be real, but that is not up for me to decide. And even if it's not, it still makes a pretty good story to give advice on. So enough of the yap. Let's get into the trap. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything. Our story comes up from us today from the RPG Horror Story subreddit from the Scottish Greek. DM's DMPC is a god. We're just the side characters. TLDR, at the end for the people who don't want to read the whole post, I got you. I want to start off this story by saying this was my first ever experience with D&D. I had no prior exposure to D&D, so thought everything the DM done was normal at the table. Oh boy, how I was wrong. So this happened back in 2021. We were fresh out of lockdown and starving for some friend time. One of my friends, we'll call him Big Tat, owns a tattoo shop and tells us his apprentice was wanting to run a D&D campaign. So myself and four of my friends decided to join. They are as follows. Paladin, a longtime player and a previous group DM, kinda the dad figure to us newer players. Monk, longtime D&D fan, especially Critical Role. Warlock, the wisecracking and Mump's boyfriend, now husband. Bard, Big Tat, this was his first time playing D&D too. And finally, me playing a reborn sorceress who had been sacrificed to the Raven Queen, but brought back for reasons you'll find out later. I just wrote that she had unfinished business, but the DM had other plans. So we get together and began our story. Our DM proudly proclaimed that we would have been playing through Princes of the Apocalypse, and that not to worry, as he knew the story was pretty bare bones, but he had a way to flesh it out. The way he decided to flesh it out, you might ask, was with his DM PC Echo. And let me tell you, Echo was about to become our worst nightmare. For you see, Echo wasn't just a DM PC, he was a character our DM had been sitting on for quite some time. He was actually writing a whole book series around him unbeknownst to us. And he would go on long tangents mid-game to tell us about all the awesome and cool things Echo could do. I remember once just straight up asking him, so what exactly is Echo's class? And I kid you not, the DM said something to the effect of, oh, Echo doesn't have a class. He's far beyond that in terms of power. Anyway, our party all meet and decide to travel together. It gets to night and we decide to stop and make camp. We set up a watch rotation and the first person to take watch was me. As I'm making my rounds, a mysterious dark hooded figure approaches from the shadows. I naturally ask them who they are and what they are doing here. The figure then lunges forward and attacks my level 1 sorcerer. The commotion wakes up the rest of the party and we roll for initiative. Our monk rolls high and gets to go first, landing a good blow. Then our paladin sets up to mark and strikes the enemy. Our warlock goes next and sends Eldritch Blast towards the foe. It was the DM's turn. With a grin, he describes how, like a shadow of death, this man slices through our monk, paladin, and warlock, effortlessly leaving them unconscious in one swoop. He then points his sword at Bard and me. It's my turn next, and I do what I think is the logical thing to do, and put my hands up to surrender, asking him what he wants. He simply replies, "This is a test, my dear, and you have all failed." Bard goes next. He goes to attack, but is stabbed and left unconscious along with the rest. But, surprise everyone, it was only a shared dream. Don't you just love those? When something big or traumatic or something huge happens to the party and then it turns out it was all just a dream. It can work for some as a way to rewrite a TPK, but I don't think that works here. We all wake the next morning to find the hooded man in camp making us all breakfast with a wide grin on his face. I could tell that Monk and Warlock in particular were unimpressed with the shenanigans that had just happened, but we proceeded anyways. To be fair, that's kind of a red flag, but at the same time, I could see it working in some other campaigns if the tone and the scenario of it was a bit better. I could see it working, honestly, but just like this, I don't want to say it's exactly a red flag, but it is something to watch out for in the very most. I guess that's the point of a red flag, but I don't think it's overall just a huge red flag. It's like a very small red flag, just to keep your ears about. Nothing bad has happened yet, but let's continue reading. The mysterious man then introduces himself as Echo. And Echo is a, hold on your hats for this, time-traveling, multiverse-hopping, wormhole-riding, reality-bending, all-knowing, super-duper edgy, and cool god. And he needs our level 1 party's help to save the world. Or something. Me, being new to D&D, thought this was cool. I immediately became infatuated with Echo and would ask him lots of questions, which the DM just absolutely lapped up. The rest of the party were less than impressed. There were concerns raised, but DM assured us that Echo would just be a bystander as we were the real heroes. And in a flash, 6 months IRL passed and we had done 0 of the actual objectives of POTA, and have just been Echo's servants. Fetching him items, finding his lost relatives, and just meaningless tasks. And everything we did had 0 impact on anything, as if we were playing a character from one of DM's books, and it was the Echo show. Eventually, the bubble burst, and it all came to a head one night during a level 20 one-shot. We had been combat starved for weeks, so I suggested we do a level 20 one-shot and do a full-blown boss rush relay. Everyone was excited and on board, as it was just meant to be us 4 facing off against progressively harder and harder enemies. It was meant to be Echo-free, but of course the DM couldn't help himself, and Echo popped into the pocket dimension we had been sucked into, and scolded us for saying we were wasting time, and that the real fight was happening in our world. Apparently, the moment we stepped into this level 20 one-shot pocket dimension was the exact moment that the actual campaign started, and the Princes of the Apocalypse were released and wreaking havoc in our world. Basically, the DM was trying to press fast forward on our level 20 one-shot so we could get back outside and play with Echo again. But we were having none of it. We told Echo to shove off and we'd be back once we're done here. So, what did the DM do in order to force us back? He power word killed our paladin, had an enemy one-shot my sorceress, and dispatched the rest of the party in various ways. Echo then reappeared, brought us all back to life, killed the remaining enemies, and with a snap of his fingers, brought us back to our world. That was the final straw. The campaign very unceremoniously came to an end after that, everyone basically saying they were bored AF of the campaign and of Echo. Oh, and remember how earlier I mentioned that my character was brought back to life by the Raven Queen because she had unfinished business? Well, the DM decided that wasn't enough. Not only was I his utter DMPC's love interest, but I was also Echo's long-lost great-great-great-granddaughter. And I, too, was a secret god. I was mortified. TLDR, DMPC is a god and we are just along for the ride. We spend 9 months IRL being his DMPC slaves and don't actually play the module. Are you telling me after all of this, you guys kept playing for 9 months? Because they said it was 6 months, right? Had passed, and then this whole thing, and then they kept playing for 3 months after everything went down. As obviously you weren't doing anything. I think after the first month of not doing anything significant, that you guys would have just stopped playing a new game. Even like a couple weeks, right? Like 1, 2, 3 weeks. That's 2 to 3 sessions, okay? And then a month. Okay, give you a month, see if anything changes. But after a month of just doing nothing, I think it should have, you guys should have like got together and left, and like obviously this campaign's not going anywhere. It's just based around your character, and none of us are having fun unless you guys were having fun. That I do not know, but reading this from the outside, it just seems like it's very unfun. And why have these overpowered DMPCs, right? Why are you gonna introduce an overpowered DMPC that's basically a god, and they can like kill all these enemies and they can knock out the party in one hit? Why even have them introduced? I'm sure you could make a DMPC that works. I like to think of it that they're taking care of all the high level stuff, and that leaves the party to do the low level stuff. I mean, and that way it could work. The party still gets to influence the world around them and still gets to play along the quest, while there's this other DMPC or even a DMPC party out here doing all the high level stuff like stopping the world from apocalypse, and then the players are playing like just like this cozy little adventure game. That sounds fun, and like as long as the focus is never on that DMPC party, like, you know, as long as it's like, hey, did you hear that they slayed the world-eating dragons? Like, that's cool. We have to go stop these bandits and turn them into a farming community. So, you know, something like that. That I can see it working here. But when you're just essentially just overpowered characters, well, albeit slave, and you're just going around doing mindless tasks, that doesn't really sound fun to me. That might be fun to some people out there. I'm not sure who, but you know, this was a couple of the players' first times playing D&D, so I can't outright blame them for not seeing anything wrong, but I feel like if you read the book and a couple of the modules, you should know how D&D kinda is played, and know that this campaign and the module isn't going the way it's supposed to go. But OP has brought us a continuation of this story. I did say it was a two-parter, so I went and grabbed the second. Well, technically I saw the second story first, and then they had linked the first story. I'm like, oh, this looks interesting, so I went and grabbed the first story, and now we are going to read the second story. Once again, these stories come from the RPG horror subreddit from the Scottish Geek. The worst DM is also the worst player. So, here it is, the long-awaited follow-up story of Echo, our terrible DM. Okay, so after that awful campaign came to an end, we stopped playing D&D altogether for about a year. That was until my friend moved close to us and asked if we would be interested in starting a new D&D campaign with him as the DM. We'd heard from the other friends that he was a great DM, so we were all excited to get started. The cast are as follows, with some previous players not returning. Me playing Eileen, a elf blood hunter ranger. Big Tat playing Johanna, a big blue sexy Goliath barbarian. Paladin from previous game now playing Aken, a fighter Yante. And finally, Echo, playing Sparky, a Twilight cleric. His choice of class will become important later. So we start off the adventure, and for the first few weeks, everything goes well. Until it doesn't. Sparky, for some reason, despite being a good aligned character, insists on picking fights with guards when he doesn't get his way, freeing trapped angry polar bears, and being surprised when they attack, and just generally being very antagonistic towards things he doesn't like. All these actions have a roll-on effect as we are a group. We try to have a chat with him about it, and his behavior improves, but not for long. I was gonna say, see, talking it out does work, and then it doesn't work. See, most of the time I say talk it out, but sometimes you can't talk it out, and people are just going to always be bad players, and that's just a sad truth. I wish people could change. I wish people could get better and learn from their previous experiences, or someone's telling them what's going on with how they're behaving is impacting the other's fun, and I wish they could learn for that. But sometimes some people just don't care. And when that happens, you have to let them go, okay? I mean, you can talk to them as much as possible, and unless you really know them, or like you're really big friends, or anything like that, I'd probably say just let them go from the campaign. But that's way easier said than done. I think it's really hard to let someone go from the campaign, because you have that face-to-face, and a lot of people don't like being, you know, what's the word? Problematic. Not problematic. A lot of people don't like being confrontational, so that can be really hard. But, I mean, what else you gonna do? You're not having fun anymore, so you could either break the campaign apart or let the player go and have everyone else keep playing. you know your situation and your shoes better than me. You know how the people around you, hopefully, how they would react. But sometimes you don't even know what a person can do. Side tangent, let's continue on with the story. His character, for some context, was just all over the place in general. He kept on asking the DM to make sanity checks, even though that wasn't a mechanic we were using, and then using his results as an excuse for whatever nonsense he was up to. Chaotic stupid. Then there was his class. Now spoilers for the Rime of the Frost Maiden here, so skip to the next part if you want to avoid any spoilers. See, I don't even have to do the spoiler warning. We were infiltrating a Drogar. Is that how you say it? I feel like I butchered that, but let me know in the comments. We were infiltrating a Drogar. This just feels so wrong. We were infiltrating a Drogar stronghold in the mountains, and Sparky kept on insisting we went a certain route, even though once again, as a party, we had decided to go on another. He was huffy but relented. When we got ambushed by the Drogar. Oh, I'm so stupid. When we got ambushed by the Draugr, Sparky made a comment like, "Should have listened to me." We went into initiative and started fighting, but when it came to the Draugr's turn, they went invisible and got the upper hand. That's when Sparky, with a massive grin on his face, cast Fairy Fire. But the DM had other plans. He then describes the Draugr running away, leaving us to chase after them, right on to a massive trap. We ended the session there, and Sparky made a comment about, "That's not what was meant to happen there." After he left, me and the DM sat and discussed his behavior and why he was so tilted by some of the encounters we've had. It was then that the DM dropped the bombshell. Sparky had read the entire module and was trying to beat the game. It all suddenly made sense. His class choice directly countered a lot of the enemy types in the module, his concept forcing us in a certain direction to avoid traps and ambushes, and the way he insists on interacting with NPCs only to be disappointed with the outcome he got. I was annoyed. What's the point if you're just going to cheat and try to win the game while making it miserable for the rest of us? The DM assured me he had a plan and that Sparky was not going to get the module as written because he had tailored it to our way of playing and our characters' backstories. And sure enough, as weeks went on, Sparky's frustration became more and more apparent as things he expected to happen didn't. So as a side note, this is how you're supposed to run modules. Modules are like foundation. They give you a world or a small part of the world. They explain like the cities and all the characters and how they act, and they give you all the combat scenarios. But it is up to the DM to work in character backstory, so it makes it more aligned to the characters in a weird way. For example, like Lost Minds of Phandelvers, you can work in all the characters' backstories into that beginning module. They even tell you that you should have a way for all the characters to come together before they begin. It like explains to you like how the module should be ran. Like you can run it word for word as the module is, but you should really just use it as a basis and throw in your own unique encounters and replace the NPCs with your own and change up the combat scenarios based on what you have in your party. Don't counter your party, but sometimes throw them a bone that lets them use their powers really well, and then sometimes throw a challenge at them where they can't just steamroll the enemies all the time if that's what they're doing. That is how you're supposed to run a module. So good job on this DM. Let's get back and finish the story. Personally, I was loving it. Our DM had obviously put in a lot of time and effort to make the story connected to our characters rather than just as written. But it all came to a head during an encounter that once again the party wanted to deal with one way and Sparky decided to deal with it his way. So, picture this. You've just rocked up to a suspected hack's cave in an isolated icy mountain. Outside, you see the remains of the previous adventuring party who dared try and enter, smeared all over the ice. You decide to send the stealthiest character in to have a snoop around before charging in. While inside, you find more humanoid remains, a butcher room, and the most disturbing thing, a 30-foot undead frost giant entombed in ice. You report back to the rest of the group and decide that stealth is very much the correct decision. Now, does your cleric A. follow the plan and help your characters self their way in? B. Ask their god for guidance before blessing your fellow party members? Or C. Ignore all the other party members, run up to the entrance of the cave, and shout at the top of their lungs, "Hello, you in the cave!" If you guess C, you are correct. We all asked the DM if there was any way to stop this, but unfortunately Sparky had made it clear that he had ran ahead. So, Out comes the 30-foot undead frost giant in initiative search. I rolled super high and went first. I turn to the DM and say, I used the dash action and used my full movement to get away from Sparky. Because, let's be honest here, there's no way my character would put her life on the line for him after repeatedly not working with the team and putting our lives in danger. As she runs away, you hear her cursing your name Sparky, and she gives you the finger. He was stunned, and I was done. The other two players love a fight though, so we did end up fighting the UFG, and I got the killing blow from a distance using my bow. Sparky spent the whole combat unconscious, as right after I went in, it was the Frost Giant's turn, and he used all 3 of his attacks to turn Sparky into Twilight Paste. Very satisfying. After the session, we all had a chat with Sparky telling him it's maybe best he retired the character as clearly he wasn't working. But in this case, with most of these D&D horror stories, the trash took itself out. He permanently stepped away from the group. After a few weeks, we brought in a new player, and she has been the best addition to the team ever. So, happy ending. TLDR. So yeah, I didn't think it was possible for Echo to be a worse player than a DM, but I was wrong. He cheated, he didn't work with the group, and he tried to outsmart a DM and win D&D. There is one more story involving Echo that's probably the worst offense of all, but the story is already long enough, so I'll save it for another day. Oh man, you can't just leave us on a cliffhanger. I need part 3 now. If this is what made him leave the group, then what was his worst offense? What could he have done that was worse than this? You have the first story, and then there was something he really did that was awful, and then you have this part where he officially leaves the group. Now let's talk about the actual story, and hopefully we get part 3 someday. I'll have to keep my eye open if they ever post it. But let's talk about the story in total. Obviously, Sparky, this player, I'm just going to call him Sparky, but obviously, Sparky was not working with the party. These players are very antagonistic and just kind of, if you go against the party at every decision, it's okay to go against the party sometimes, but if you're constantly going against the party, constantly getting them into dangers, then it's not really, it's obviously not going to be fun because it's like the party's decisions never matter because it's just spontaneous character making inane and rash decisions for everybody else that just gets them into trouble. But I guess for once doing something in game solves it. I still would have done it outside the table, but this is kind of like a mixture. They kind of did something in game about the character, and then they talked to him after the game, and he left. So I wish everyone, I feel like everyone deserves a second chance, but sometimes you kind of just know. And not saying to give Sparky, this was his second chance. Bad DM, campaign ended. You have this second chance where you get to be a player and actually be like a person that can work with people, that wants to play with people, that wants to tell a story with other people, and you blew it by wanting to do your own thing. So, good thing that Sparky up and left. As for everyone else, nope, that's about it. That's all I can think of. I think they handled everything pretty well here. I kind of would have done without the whole killing their character endgame. I kind of would have just, kept playing the session as normal and then talk to them afterwards, but that's just personally me. So, what would you have guys done different? Because that is all the story I have for you today. 2 pretty long ones and 2 pretty good ones. Although I will say there was a lot of grammatical errors, okay? I did have to fix a lot of spelling and grammar and stuff. But that's no big deal. I can't talk good anyways. I think I type better than I talk. But even then, no, I misspell a lot of stuff. But hey, who am I to judge? So anyways, that was just a minor nitpick. So thank you, the Scottish Greek, for uploading your story for us to read. So please get to uploading part 3. And thank you guys for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed it, like, share it, do all that stuff. Click on my name to see other type of content I do. And if it interests you, subscribe. You can see more RPG content and you can see more horror stories. Or I'm trying to do stories, but I can't really find good stories. Or I guess good stories aren't really entertaining, but I'd love to do just regular stories too. I just want to do any kind of story, but I'd rather see them on my subreddit. So, social media in the description if you want to leave your stories or just reach out to me in general. And I hope you gobs have a lop of a day. May your adventures be free from overpowered main characters.